Sridhar talked about Aristotle. I'm going to talk about Plato. And on track 2, we have Socrates. You guys all in the right place? Okay, I'm sure some of you are thinking, have we even come to the right conference? So, well, I'll tell you something. You are, because the food's going to be great. So what I'm going to do today is talk a little bit about what does it mean running a business on Zoho. And so let me ask this rhetorical question, I guess, because I'm going to answer it myself. Can you actually run your business entirely on Zoho? Here's a person who's running 10 applications. What does it mean to run your entire business on Zoho? Okay, so before that, I'm going to pull us back a bit and use some common terminology so we approach this from the same place. So let me start by asking this. This sounds almost tautological, but it's worth bringing up because I ask this question to a lot of people. What exactly is a business app? Okay, I'm going to answer this myself, given the audio system here. So the real thing is when I ask people about this, you get lots of answers. You get a lot of jargon, you get phrases, people talk about modules and workflows and permissions and all kinds of things. That you go to any presentation which talks about business apps, that's what you hear. So let me offer how we view this, or how we think of a business app. It's as simple as this. It's really a model of some underlying real-world activity. That's what it is. It's nothing more complicated than that. So why do we model this? We model this because there's think of a business activity that you're familiar with. So think of sales, for example, because that's what this conference is about. Why do we model this? So we model this because we want to standardize something. We want to have some sort of standardized processes, right? If some of you have followed industrial engineering and industrial processes, you know people standardize things because they want to reduce variance. Did I hear that? Or changes. Variance. And variance is, a common term for variance is errors. So that's why people standardize processes. And once you standardize them, you can actually start to replicate them. Think of how you use your own software. You can start to replicate it. You can start to get people, you can teach it to people. You can start to institutionalize it. You can start to have a way to do things that frees up your time to do other things. That's the fundamental purpose of a business app. So when you go through the next 3 days and look at everything we do, you should think about this and see if this is if we're doing this right, if we're actually modeling what you're trying to do in your business. So let's get beyond that and say, what are we actually modeling? You look at any business activity, it comes down to 3 things. It comes down to the people. So what are we modeling in people? Again, think of the real world. We always do this when we develop our products. Think of what the real world is. What are you doing when you model people? You have roles, right? You have different roles you play in the organization. You have hierarchies. You have spans of control. So you have to model all of that into your software. So what about processes? You have workflows. You have sequences. You have steps. You have things the way a particular process works, whether it's a sales process, whether it's an inventory process, or whether it's your customer support process. So you have to model the flows. And finally, you have the data or the information. Again, what does the business do? It builds information, it modifies the information, it improves it and shares it. So does your business software accomplish these 3 things and model them right, just the same way you want to run your business? That's the real test of whether it does its job. So in the next 2 or 3 days, you should look at this and see, you'll see a lot of things that we cover go down these paths. All the new innovations and everything we do really come down to a simple essence like this. It's either to model one of these 3 things. Okay, so before I get back to my question of can you run your business on the cloud, we talked about business software. I got one more step to go. So before I ask you, can you run your entire business on the cloud, we have to really distill back what a business fundamentally does. So here's one view of it. You can really bring it down with most businesses to 3 things. So you manage customers. So think of everything to do with customers, your sales, marketing, all that stuff. You manage your customers, all customer interactions. After all, that is the fundamental reason for almost every business. You run your operations. So that's what you do to manage your company itself, your reporting systems, your employees, your operations, everything else that is engaged to serve those customers. So that's running your operations. And then, of course, you manage what for most businesses is their most important asset, their employees, certainly for us, your employees. So you manage and empower your employees because that's the way you're actually going to drive productivity. That's the way you're actually going to get the most out of your business. So those are the three fundamental things any business does. So let me relate that back to software and technology. So take the first part, manage your customers, and you will immediately recognize three major categories here, the sales, marketing, and support, which, by the way, is the essence of this conference. And the jargon that people use for this is typically, they call it the front office, and the primary activity here is the sales activity. So one thing you can think of is, think of what these processes do. The sales activity, acquire customers, reach out to customers, that's the role of marketing, and retain your customers and keep them. That's the role of support, account management, and the services that come after the sale. So that's the front office. What about the operations part? The term for that that people use is the back office. It's the bottom part of the screen. So here typically you have the processes and functions that run the company. For a lot of companies, it's centered around their people and reporting systems. That's fundamentally their accounting, finance systems and their HR systems. And then there's operations, which may be in today's world, that is largely IT, but it's also other operations. And that's the back office. Usually, this is centered around the finance and HR operation. And now you've got all the teams. You've got the customer-facing function. You've got the stuff that runs the company. And then you've got to empower these teams. So that brings us to the third big area of empowering employees. And this is what we call productivity and collaboration. And this is how we arrange all of our software. So so what does this mean for a business now? Three broad categories, tons of apps, lots of applications, right? And immediately you think of that, you think of automation, you also think of complexity. Zoho offers over 25 apps. I mean, most of you have probably gone, some of you are already using over 10, but we have more than 25. That number keeps climbing. And let's put that into some organized context. This will give you an idea of whether this is just a company throwing stuff together, or do they have some vision or some idea of how these things come together? What are these all trying to do? What's the vision behind this whole thing? So this is the Zoho front office. The flagship product here, as you all know, is the CRM product in the middle, focused on acquisition. Our marketing suite is the more recent, and you can see that's developed. We've got some new products there. You'll hear a lot about Sales IQ, the thing that looks like that Target logo. So we've got that Sales IQ marketing. You have the support on the other side, which is Desk and other products. Again, centered around CRM. The idea here is to unify customer-facing activities. And you can see that in our strategy. How many of you have heard of CRM Plus? Quite a few, right? That's a product we released about 6 months ago, a little bit longer than that. That is really a suite of products that help you put these functions together. And you will see more and more such strategic bundles coming from Zoho as we seek to unify what you do when you serve your customers. Let's talk about the back office for a minute here. Here, we are centered around finance and HR. I know that's not the focus of this conference, but the flagship product here is Zoho Books, which is our finance and accounting software. Lots of stuff being added there, lots of innovation coming out there too. We have an inventory product coming up. We have an expense management product. We have something very interesting, a subscriptions product, which is a recognition that a lot of businesses are moving towards subscription type models where you bill your customer every year. So we built something exactly like to handle that for businesses, because that's not how traditional accounting, accrual accounting works. So we've built a new product for that. We've got Creator and some other products on the IT side. So that's the back office. Productivity and collaboration, once again, this breaks down. This is the kind of stuff everybody uses. All business professionals grow up with this software. It's centered around 3 areas here: the storage, authoring, and communications. So email and docs is probably what's at the center of this whole thing. So to walk you through this, storage with the cloud, storage has become a big aspect of what you do, being able to interchange that with other things you use on the cloud. There's authoring, which is all the tools you use to put things together, like this presentation. Communications, we have 3 flagship products here: email, which is Zoho Mail, and then 2 other products, Connect. Sridhar talked about Connect. That's how we expect to engage from you and take feedback from you. We also have chat. All these products continue to evolve. So if you've seen something before, look it up again in 3 months, and it's probably going to look different and look updated. So that's the productivity suite. Now, all these apps have their mobile equivalents too. It is a mobile world. A lot of things are going mobile first. So we haven't lagged behind on that. At least we picked up our heels after we did fall back a bit. And we have more than 50 mobile apps. Sridhar introduced you to one of them, and we keep adding them. Some of them are broad. Some of them are narrow and do a specific function. Some of them are really enticing. I can see they're so enticing that many of you are looking at them now instead of listening to me. So that's a lot of products. So how do customers actually run their business on the cloud? Now, all of you know the trend of what's happening in this business, so I won't belabor that point. But what do customers do once they acknowledge that they need to get on the cloud? It turns out that there is no grand strategy. If you go to most businesses today, you still find all of these are true. You find some of the stuff that's on the cloud. Some of you might recognize in your own companies, maybe you're doing docs on the cloud. Almost certainly you're doing email on the cloud, perhaps. And in some cases, you're doing your CRM on the cloud or your customer-facing stuff. Your back office, today, many of the back offices are still on-premise, not yet on the cloud. So you see a mix of these things. You see a mix of vendors, some cloud vendors, some on-premise vendors. A mix of all of this stuff. It's in transition. It's a system in transition. And today it is really a bit of a hodgepodge. Stuff put together. We see this time and again with clients. So there are some, when somebody breaks free and happens to have a single strategy that puts it all on the cloud, that actually makes news. So this is the state of things today. So what's the consequence? Multiple invoicing. So if you're looking at it, you have billing cycles, different vendors, different invoices, multiple billing cycles. So on the other end, you have multiple logins. Each of these systems have their own authentication system. You have logins. You have disparate user interfaces, things you need to learn. Your staff have to be retrained on all of these products. It's basically mayhem for the user and for the administrators. It's a bunch of confusion and headaches today. And that's the consequence of having multiple systems, multiple applications, stuff on the cloud, stuff on-premise. So how do you fix all this stuff? So a lot of it happens through integrations, patchwork. So you got all these apps, you got all these capabilities, you need them to work together. Remember, we talked about modeling. The role of software is to model stuff. So they have to work together. They have to mimic your real world. So you patch it together. And you put these integration services, you hire integrators, you spend a lot of money on integration technologies. And now what happens with that? You have all these issues. When you start to integrate technology, you have authentication issues, authorization, do people have the right access, workflows, different applications model their workflows differently. They put steps together differently. They create different actions for the same triggers. You have data problems. You have to sync them across these applications. You wind up duplicating data. I'm sure many of you will recognize that you have your contacts in at least 3 or 4 different databases, starting from your phone and your CRM and your contacts database and so on. If you really look at this closely, that's because this is exactly what's broken. The people part is broken, the process part is broken, and the data part is broken. But wasn't that the role of software in the first place? To fix these things. And now what we've done is we've put all these systems in place, we've come back to integrate them, and we find these kinds of issues, which again are a consequence of broken processes, broken connections between people, and non-unified views of data. So this is the fundamental issue today. And we spend more and more dollars. We spend $8 to every dollar spent in software, $8 is spent in integration. All this complexity is expense. So at Zoho, we've taken a more unified view. Long ago, before my time here, Sridhar's view was to build something really broad. Take the time to do it. Build something really broad, put it together in an integrated way, so you have all your applications that work with each other, unified views of your customer, unified views of your processes, unified views of your employees and the information that they work with. Now, having said that, we don't live in a world of our own. We know the cloud is shared. So we work with other applications. It's not just Zoho applications that use Zoho data or the other way around. We work with other applications. A big example of that is this, Google. In fact, some of our product managers bemoan that some of our products integrate better with Google products than with our own products. And so I've seen a lot of heads nodding here. So that's the way it is. We just have to do what's right by the customer. So when people use this, of course, we'll integrate our products too, and we continue to do that. But our goal is to just do this right. We know we don't live in a world of our own. We would love for you to put your business on Zoho, but we have to earn that. We can't demand that. And that's why we put these conferences together, and that's why we share these strategies with you, so you see really where we're going with this. So why aren't vendors doing this? Sounds like a good idea. Why aren't people doing this stuff? There are plenty of big companies out there. What was the word Sridhar used? Unicorns, right? How many did he say there? I don't know, 20 unicorns or more? Billion-dollar valuations, big companies, lots of money, been around long time. Why aren't they doing this stuff? It really comes down to a couple of things. Many companies are one-product companies, or maybe two-product companies. They don't have that notion of an application portfolio. It's too big for them to swallow. And I see that with actually, not with any ego, but with candor. It's too big. I've been an entrepreneur myself, and it's hard to think beyond what you do. It's hard to think beyond one company or one product because it overwhelms you. That's one big reason. So even as companies grow, this is what they do. And guess what? Over time, even as they get bigger, they get pressured into focusing on the thing they do. Which leads me to the second point. A lot of companies don't have that long-term view of themselves and of their customers. And ironically, as a company gets bigger, as it gets more established, as it has more access to capital in the capital markets and otherwise, this gets even more solidified because it prevents them from expanding. Their investors and the markets demand that they actually focus on what they do. Everything else is considered too risky. Thankfully, we don't suffer from that. And so we're able to take this approach and come up with a notion of a suite. We're actually ambitious enough to say that we'll build this and get companies to run their entire business on our platform. So let me ask this question. Can you run it on Zoho? Indeed. I don't know if you guys all believe me. After all, I'm just one of another 30 guys in a black t-shirt. So why should you believe me? That's why. We had 2,800 people. 2,800 people. 5 countries. 13 million users. We run a lot of conferences like this all over the world. Everything like this, this is running on the cloud right now. It's running on the cloud. There's no backup. There's no backup. If it fails, I'll have to turn this off and just talk to you. So that's how we put ourselves. So Zoho runs on the cloud. We don't use any Microsoft. We don't use any Oracle. We don't use any SAP. We don't use any NetApp. We don't use anything that I was taught to use when I started my career in IT. We use our own products. So that's actually the biggest testimony we can bring to our customers, that we actually sample the stuff ourselves. Everything that you test has gone through on our platform internally. Constantly, if you look at our Connect forums and what we do, we have constantly people bashing the product. We have people with icons, with dark glasses, looking around, trying to punch holes into software and find security breaches. We have people complaining that features don't work on iOS or Android or whatever their favorite platforms are. That's the rigor we bring to what we do. And we just we punish ourselves with our own products. Very few vendors actually do that. So that's one of the reasons why we were able to do something like this, because we actually practice it. That's the company. It's been around, as Sridhar said, almost 2 decades. We're private, which helps us to do a lot of things. Lots of companies. I talked about some of these stats. That's where we are all over the world. Lots of partners. Many of you today, in the last 6 months, we've had several partner events. We had one in the UK. We had one in France. Partners like us a lot. Our French partners right here. So they like to follow us around. We had one in Australia, and we'll continue to do these. So lots of partners all over the world. So I close with this. So what we think of Zoho is really a business operating system, something that helps you operate your business. It's all on the cloud. It's taken us a long time. It's been 19 years. We're going to be here another 20. Stick with us. Thank you.